A lot of you probably don't know this, but my very first faction ship video was about the Succubus, and the Succubus is the very first faction ship that I did fly in this game. Now the Succubus is a very dangerous little boat. It has excellent PvP applications. It's also a very nice boat for PvE. It's definitely the most popular frigate at the moment, and it will be time to see what this little thing can do. Alright, so let's go to the ship info, trait description. The roll bonus will give you a shield field module. Advanced small laser operation bonus will give you plus 20% small laser damage, plus 7.5% small laser tracking speed. Advanced frigate command bonus will give you plus 20% afterburner speed increase, and it will give you plus 5% shield volume. Of course, that is per skill level. Overall, pretty standard for a Sansha ship. Now, the attributes and fittings: 3 high slots, 3 medium slots, 3 low slots, 3 combat, and 3 engineering rigs. The defense is 4399. The Succubus is a shield tank, don't armor tank the Succubus. The capacitor is really good, almost 1000 gigajoules for a frigate, that's a lot. The recharge rate is also really nice, 10.18 gigajoules per second. The Succubus can lock 5 targets, a very small signature radius, a very decent flight velocity. The Succubus is the fastest frigate with an afterburner. It can reach velocities up to 20 kilometers per second with the medium afterburner. Now I have 551.45 DPS, and these are the C-type small pulse lasers. They have a very nice tracking, overall decent range, and a good activation time of 3.12 seconds. 1 scrambler, dual webs, the afterburner, a medium extender, and 1 adaptive shield hardener. This is a PvP build, or a speed tank PvE build. Now I have dual burst aerators and 1 laser collision. In the engineering rigs, dual auxiliary thrusters and 1 polycarbon engine housing. The nanocore is the Sansha AI core. Now the bonus will be for the lasers. Doesn't matter what nanocore you pick, they all have basically the same stats. I did pick this nanocore for the aesthetics to make the ship look nice, but again, any nanocore that you have, they will probably have the exact same stats, so the nanocore is fine whichever you pick, although the dark yellow core looks very nice as well. 14,568 is the overall hit point status, and almost 10,000 in shield because of the medium extender, a passive shield tank Succubus, speed tank Succubus. Now for the implants, you have 2 options. You have the pulse crystal and the focus crystal, and I will show you how both work. Now the pulse crystal will give you a immediate damage bonus, but it will increase the capacity usage, although the level 45 attribute is not really that good for the Succubus because it will kill your own shield, while the focus crystal can run really well and it will give you very nice DPS, but the short range on the pulsators can mean that you might miss the target, and if you miss the target then the DPS will be gone. But both implants should be running really well on this little boat, and I will show you the maximum DPS that the Succubus can have with the current builds that I run. Okay, undocked. I'm very glad that there is not a lot of slots to push around. Only the weapon has to be adjusted accordingly. Now the Succubus, like I mentioned before, is the fastest frigate with an afterburner, and that means the Succubus is one of the best speed tank ships in the game. Same can be said about the Phantasm. The Nightmare maybe, but the Nightmare is a battleship and it's very easy to hit a battleship. 20,072 defense, 9.6 thousand shield, 4.2 thousand meters per second is the afterburner speed, warp preparation time 2.75 seconds. A speedy and agile little boat. The capacitor is stable, which is always a bonus. Now the implant is activated and the DPS will be 936.90, almost 1000 DPS, but the capacitor runtime is 2 minutes and 26 seconds. That is because the implant does increase power usage. Now, like I said, the secondary attribute will heal your own shield, and this is why this implant is good, but don't use the level 45 attribute on the Succubus. It will kill your own shield, which is kind of hilarious because this ship does use lasers. Your DPS should be fine, the ship should be fine, but don't use the level 45 attribute. It's not a good idea if you are running a shield tank,
Docking request accepted.
shield tank ship, especially a passive shield tank. So let's quickly swap to the focus crystal. That one is, I believe, the player's favorite. The Succubus can go and fight with big ships easily. Not a lot of ships can catch the Succubus. Drone boats and Serpentis ships might be the highest threat level on the radar for the ship, but everything else should be quite easy. Even the Blood Raiders can be very vulnerable towards a Succubus because you just need to maintain a 0-kilometer orbit. You just need one Nosferatu and the Blood Raider will have a very, very bad day against a boat like this. Alright, well, let's quickly charge up the implant. Now, as you all know, the implant has been nerfed a little bit, so the overall charge time and the overall DPS has been reduced. And I'm all in for a proper balance, so I don't really mind that, but in the long run, one miss can make all this DPS vanish, but the DPS when fully charged, 1.4 thousand, it's actually pretty solid, it's pretty good, and definitely going to work really well against big targets. Now you can use this build with the beam lasers. Beam lasers have a bit more range, they have a little less DPS, but they should have a little bit more alpha. The tracking will be a little bit lower as well. Now with this build you can easily use the implant, not the implant but the rig that increases the laser range. That rig is not in my hangar here, but I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if you increase the optimal range, you can use the Succubus as a kite with the long range disruptor. The laser armbit extension is basically the rig that you want to have on the ship if you want to extend the maximum range of the beam lasers. And with this build you can use the focus crystal or the pulse crystal. I believe the focus crystal is going to work really well with the kite Succubus because you will orbit at about 15-16 kilometers. That will be the optimal range with the beam lasers, and since your tracking will be able to easily keep up with the target, you will be able to do maximum possible damage, and you should not be worried about missing the target in that case. So the beam laser Succubus is definitely a very interesting thing that I know a lot of players like to use, and it's a valid choice for the Succubus. Overall,
Docking request accepted.
a very decent idea with the extended range. Now let me go and let me swap to the focus crystal to show you the maximum possible DPS with the focus crystal. As you noticed, the DPS is a little bit lower, but the extra range can be very important. You can avoid webs, and if you are not webbed, then the chances to get hit are very, very low. Of course, the drone boats will be able to hit you because drones are very fast, but a skilled Succubus Succubus pilot can easily outmaneuver drone's 647.31 DPS, and it's slowly going to be charged up, and at maximum charge 1150.04 DPS. Nice. Pretty decent DPS for beam lasers, a little bit lower, but the trade-off is the extra range and overall better speed tanking, because you are going to be orbiting outside of the web range. You can do a build like this with one heatsink. Basically it increases your DPS, and you can do the same builds. You can do a build like this, which does work for PvE. I wouldn't be using a build like this for PvP, but it could work at a very close range, basically against Blood Raiders, and orbit at 0. I figured out it's very easy to actually kill a Balgoron 1v1 with a frigate, and yeah, one of the ways how to do that is by using a small Nosferatu on your frigate and maintaining a 0 kilometer orbit. Now, to use a build like this, I had to change one rig, basically a power rig, and another build is with adaptive shield hardener, medium booster, and a small Nosferatu, or a medium Nosferatu, small booster, and with beam lasers. Overall, there is a lot of ways. There's a lot of ways on how you can build this ship, and there is this this build with the extender and damage control. Although the damage control can work, but I would still prefer to use one adaptive. After all, this little ship is a speed tank, and you are not going to be hit by a lot of ships, so a damage control might not be necessary, but again, it's another option that you can fit on this boat. And again, the damage control combined with the medium extender can give you some nice buffer in some situations that can be a lifesaver. So let's quickly take a look at the defense. 47,000 hit points with the medium, with the damage control active, which is not bad, and the resistance is also really good. So you get a good buffer tank, you get a very good speed tank. I think that's plenty of defense on
Docking
this
request
small
accepted.
boat. It's basically speed is life. That's how frigates work, that's how the Succubus works, and that's how the Dramiel works. Overall, plenty of options to choose from. Okay, well, let's go and
We're under
take a little ride on the Succubus. Let's take the Succubus out for a ride. My apologies, I was looking at the chat, and Ortus apparently will be tackled very
We're
soon.
under attack.
Okay, so you will notice that I am moving at about 3 kilometers per second. My orbit is set at 6 kilometers, although perhaps I should orbit at about 9 or 10 kilometers. That's about the maximum range on the Succubus.
We're under attack.
Now, orbiting cruisers, battleships, battleships, it's, you know, it's going really smooth. The tracking on the pulse feathers is keeping up, but against the smaller targets, you will have to do manual orbiting, manual flying, or you have to reduce the maximum speed. Now, the Succubus, just like the Dramiel, does reward manual flying a lot. I have a lot of friends who fly the Succubus much better than I do, of course, and they do pilot the ship manually, and I have seen them pull some crazy maneuvers with this boat. Again, it's a very rewarding ship if you are manually flying it, and I definitely encourage all players to do the manual flying on all frigates. Of course, that does require some practice. I myself need practice on manual flying, to be honest. I know to pilot cruisers manually really well. I know to do it with battle cruisers, battleships, but with frigates I sometimes struggle, mostly because they're really fast, and while I'm used to fast ships, frigates are really fast, so that takes some getting used to, but honestly I do find the Succubus very interesting. I find all ships interesting, but some of the ships that catch my interest usually end up becoming my PvP ships, so the Succubus has a good chance to become one. Although the Garmur is, I would say the Garmur does feel a little bit easier to fly. The Garmur doesn't have to slow down for the missiles to hit. It doesn't have issues with tracking because missiles don't have issues with tracking. So the Garmur for PvP is definitely much easier to pilot, while the Succubus, Dramiel, and I believe the third level require much more piloting skills. I believe the frigate that you can practice manual flying on is the Punisher Assault. The assault frigates are really good for that job. Interceptors can also be a very good option. The tier 8 interceptors are very good ships for practice. But if you do the normal orbit, you should still do pretty well. Again, against small ships, perhaps you have to do some keep at range, perhaps even a bit of manual flying, because as you will notice throughout this video, I will be missing the small ships because the ship's orbit, the ship's velocity and orbit is a little bit too much for the tracking. Now a good thing to do is slow down a little bit. Even if you slow down by 50%, you are still going to be really fast, and the turrets on the pirate ships here are not going to be able to hit the Succubus. So we have a lot of options really. I use the keep at range option because I want to show you that option, while it does give you some good damage on ships, it's kinda risky to use because it will make you vulnerable to incoming fire because your ship will be moving in a straight line. Now, moving in a straight line is never a good idea if you are flying a frigate. I know for a fact I have destroyed hundreds, if not thousands, of frigates that were going towards me in a straight line. So the best way is to do a spiral approach, or approach at an angle. That way the transversal velocity will be always high, and the chance that you get killed in one hit would be very small. I would say, by small I mean probably zero, although never really true zero, because there's always the chance that something happens and for some reason the turrets decide to pop you. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Never happened to me, by the way. I have never lost a frigate that way, although I haven't really been flying frigates a lot in PvP. But it's one aspect of frigates that you should keep in mind. Basically, maneuverability and speed are your strength, and never allow your target to have a clear shot at your ship, because if they have a clear shot, you will be taking a lot of damage. Now, the Succubus is also one of the tankiest faction frigates. The Succubus combines speed and tank, basically, and getting hit is not really a big problem, although some battleships, battlecruisers can easily one hit even the Succubus that has the medium extender. Perhaps in that case a damage control might save your ship. Pop the damage control and pop the extender, and if you get hit, it will probably absorb most of the damage. So I guess that's one of the ways how you can use the Succubus with the damage control. Although in most cases you will be orbiting and you will be moving very quickly. Now the Succubus can fight any ship in the game, however there are some ships that you should be careful around. Primarily avoid fighting Vigilants, avoid fighting Vindicators. I think you can fight a Daredevil if you are using the Invaders, because basically the Daredevil will slow you down and it will increase your tracking. So it means the Daredevil will be taking some hits. Even if the Daredevil is a kite, I think you should have enough range to hit the Daredevil. Although Serpentis ships are always very difficult to fight if speed is your strength, because they can web you down to 1 or 0 meters per second. Basically they slow down and you are not moving. So Serpentis ships might be tricky. Blood Raider ships, I would say go for it, because I think Blood Raider ships will have a very hard time to knock out a Succubus, mostly from my personal experience, because a Succubus with a small Nosferatu can maintain the capacitor long enough so that it always has points and always has the afterburner on. And since the Balagorn has a lot of capacitor, yeah, it's going to be a very, very long fight. You can even go and kill the Ashmu the same way, because the Ashmu and the Balagorn both can't really hit you. The Succubus, if skilled, might be a problem, but the Cruer, my apologies, the Cruer might be problematic in the hands of a skilled pilot, because the Cruer will have very short Nosferatu or neutralizer cycle and they will kill capacitor much faster. So they might be able to counter your small Nosferatu. And the other potential threat that you might encounter for a Succubus are drone boats. Stratios, Prophecies, ships that have nasty drones, ships that have a lot of drone DPS, ships that have a bonus on drone speed are potentially very lethal in the hands of a good pilot, of course. Light drones can be extremely problematic if they are used on a DPS Prophecy. Medium drones can also be very lethal. Valkyries, Warriors, basically. Warriors are the fastest drones in the game. They can go up to 17 kilometers per second, definitely need to catch up to a Succubus. And in the hands of a skilled pilot, they will be doing some nasty DPS. Now I'm fairly sure that the drones have been fixed, because I remember the drones acting all weird when I used them before one of the recent patches. So back then perhaps you were able to easily avoid drones, but since drones have been patched and since they seem to be behaving a lot better than they used to, drones are a very valid threat to frigates, and drones are classified as some of the best anti-frigate weapons systems in the game. So be careful around those. Although if the target has no tank, then you have a good chance to kill them before they kill you, especially if you are using the buffer tank, the extender. Although again, be very, very careful if you are engaging drone boats with a Succubus. That can count for battleships that use drone boats. Now one exception might be the Rattlesnake, because the Rattlesnake has a bonus on large drones, and 99.99% of Rattlesnakes out there have a bad build for some reason. So if you encounter a Rattlesnake, and if you're in a Succubus and you are looking for a target, I would say try the Rattlesnake. There's a high chance that the large drones are not going to be able to reach you, although again I will say that there is always the chance that you might encounter a skilled player, and I have friends who have the large drones from the rattlesnake go about 10 kilometers per second. So yeah, always a risk that you encounter a rattlesnake like that, so always be very careful when engaging a drone boat. Now for missions, the Succubus is actually really good. Now I think I made a little mistake. I should have used the beam lasers, because the tracking at 15 kilometers will be much better than the tracking with pulse lasers going full speed at 6 kilometers. And I think we all can agree that I had some tracking issues in some parts of this video, especially against the smaller ships. And of course, while recording this, I was a little bit busy with PvP, so I was at 2 places at once, and that might affect the orbit and things similar to that. But with the beam lasers, I would be able to easily maintain a good 15 kilometer orbit, and the Succubus, as the previous 3 frigates, has some really nice clear time for its size, and overall it can easily clear storylines, it can easily clear high second counters, low second counters. The Succubus is almost like the Dramiel in terms of safety in low sec. It's very difficult to scan a Succubus, usually has 3 signals. We can create a anti-scan PvE low sec Succubus. That ship will get notified if anyone clicks on a scanner. Basically you get a ping and you can warp out. Small ships are really good for low sec missions, low sec encounters, much better than battleships. Now yes, you can use battleship, you can use any ship you like, but battleships are very easy to kill, and in low sec I personally value survivability over speed, over clear speed, because being able to live through a mission, through a low sec mission, is a very good achievement, especially after we consider the fact that we have so many pirates in low sec. Although it's not really the same for all regions, it can be applied for Gallant and Calvary the most, while the Amar and Mimitar space is usually very quiet, very chill. So for Gallant and Calvary, survivability is the way to go. Basically a small ship with good DPS and with a small signature, while in the more safer areas you can easily go use a larger ship with more DPS. Although I would still be careful, because there's pirates everywhere, and just because one area seems to be safe, at one point it might not be safe. I already mentioned that Amar and Mimitar is basically one of the safest regions in the game. That can change on a update. Perhaps the developers add something that's only exclusive to Amar or Mimitar space, and perhaps that might attract pirates to go there. A lot of things can happen, so it's best to have all ships for most situations. Or it's, I would say, very similar to what I do for PvP. Basically, I have a ship for every possible situation. Against the battleship, I have the Macariel, I have the Megatron Striker, and ships similar to that, the Spacepan. For cruisers, I have the Cinnabal, Stratius, and for frigates, I also have the Cinnabal and Stratius. In some cases, using the Stratius is much better than using the Cinnabal. In some other cases, it's the other way around. Same can be said about my PvP battleships. Sometimes the Macarial much better than the Megatron, but in some other cases the Megatron much better than the Macarial. And the same can be said about the missions in low sec. In some cases you want that high DPS if it's safe, in some other cases you want that safety, and it all revolves around that aspect of how you approach the mission. But for high sec, maximum DPS, and you don't have to worry about the tank. The minimal tank is enough. I could probably go and add a second heatsink, although I still like to have one booster just in case I get hit, because I don't trust myself with a Frigate that much. But a skilled Succubus pilot would probably go and use dual heatsinks and go full on speed tank, because not many ships can track this little ship, and in a mission, in a high sec mission, there's 100% chance that nothing will hit you if you do a proper speed tank. Well then, that was the Succubus, one of the deadliest and one of the scariest frigates in the game. I really do like this ship, and definitely a boat that requires some knowledge on how to pilot the ship, requires a lot of knowledge for manual piloting if you want to make the most out of this little boat. But with that being said, I really hope that you enjoyed. As always, I love you all. Fly safe, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.